Connected Homeschooling, Episode 11.
Welcome to the Connected Homeschooling Podcast, where we connect homeschooling families like yours with leaders, authors, speakers, and all-around interesting people who provide great conversations, tips, and advice. Now here's your host, Devin Dabney.
Well, hello and greetings to all of my listeners this week on the Connected Homeschooling Podcast. I'm glad to be back for another episode. And this week my guest is Jimmie Lanley. She's one of the co-founders of the Homeschool Network, and she's also a homeschooling parent to an only child. So if you're a homeschooling parent who has an only child, or you know someone who is homeschooling an only child, this may be very valuable for you. But even if that's not the case, I hope that this interview will be inspiring, and you can also find out about the Homeschool Network. But first, before we get to that interview, I'd like to just share with you about a project that I've been working on for the holiday season. I know that the holiday season can be one of the most stressful times of the year in terms of finances. And so I prepared a new book, an ebook called 20 Ways to Generate an Extra $1,000 for the holiday season. If you're interested in checking out that book, I invite you to visit devindabney.com/20 ways. That's devindabney.com/20 ways. And I hope it'll be a great resource for you, something that you would check out and give me feedback on. Now, without further ado, we'll get to our interview with Jimmie Lanley. My guest today is Jimmie Lanley, and she's a consultant, teacher, speaker, writer, blogger, author, and the co-owner of the Homeschool Network. And she also has 9 years of experience with homeschooling. Welcome to the show, Jimmie.
Hey, thanks, Devin. It's great to be here with you today.
Well, I'm glad to have you here, and excited to share what you're doing for the homeschooling community and also for others. Why don't you take a few minutes and just share with us, I guess, exactly who Jimmie Lanley is?
Yeah, well, first of all, I will say that Jimmie is my real name. A lot of people kind of wonder about that. Is it a nickname? But my name really is Jimmie. That's, my birth certificate, passport, driver's license. I was named after my dad, whose name is James, who goes by Jim. And I actually married a man named James, who goes by Jim. So we're Jim and Jimmie. It's very unique, and people normally remember our names. And I have one daughter, and she's 14 years old. And one of the more unique things about our life circumstance is we lived abroad in China for about 8 years. And so that's actually why we started homeschooling. And then we've been back in America for about 3 years now. And we've just continued homeschooling and definitely made a commitment to homeschool all the way through to high school graduation.
Okay. Now, one of the reasons that I started the Connected Homeschooling show is to inspire the listeners and inspire families. And one way that we do that each week is to share a scripture or a quote that would benefit our listeners. Do you want to share that with us?
Yeah, well, when I think about homeschooling, one verse from the Bible that really meant a lot to me, and this is not going to be the typical verse that people choose, but it's out of Daniel. Chapter 1, verse 17, and it's talking about Daniel and, the three Hebrew teens that hung out with him, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And the scripture says, "As for these four youths, God gave them learning and skill in all literature and wisdom."
Wow.
So I love that verse because it shows that God is the one who gives us knowledge. He's the one that gives us skill. And it's not just in, spiritual things. It can be in literature. It can be in handicraft. He gifted craftsmen to build the tabernacle in the Old Testament. So any kind of knowledge and skill that we have, it ultimately comes from him.
Okay. Well, that's a great scripture, and that we're actually going to include that in the show notes for today.
Great.
And so if anybody wants to post that on their refrigerator or stick it around for them to keep that in mind,
Yes.
We know that our wisdom and our skill comes from the Lord. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Well, you kind of mentioned it in the introduction, but let's talk about your homeschooling journey. How did you even learn about homeschooling? Was this something that was passed down to you? Just give us the story of how homeschooling came into Jimmie's life.
Yeah, very unexpectedly, actually. I was a public school teacher for about 7 years. I taught in Tennessee 1 year and Florida for about 6 years, and I loved it. I loved my job. I was a working mom. My child was in daycare at 8 weeks old. It's kind of shocking for the homeschool community, but that's where we were. That's what I did. I never thought I would homeschool. I had heard about homeschooling because sometimes I would have kids come. I taught 8th grade most of the time, and so I would have kids that would stop homeschooling. You know, a lot of people, especially back then, I think they would homeschool through elementary, and then once they got to high school, they would put their kids in public school.
Mm-hmm.
So I would see some of these kids that were coming out of homeschooling, and they were always really great kids, you know, but they had typical little mistakes, like they never put their name on their paper, and they weren't really good with deadlines, and so it kind of gave me a clue as to some of the negatives for homeschooling, but I did not have a negative perception of it. I just never thought of it as an option. But when we decided to move abroad doing ministry, then it became a very real necessity. There were private schools where we lived in China when my daughter would have been going into kindergarten, but they were extremely expensive. I'm talking about, you know, maybe $10,000 a year. And I knew that I could do a better job than those schools could at a fraction of the price. So that's what I did.
Okay. Now, going back to your beginnings with homeschooling, you mentioned that you taught and it was generally 8th grade. Did that give you, I guess, any ideas as far as how you wanted to structure your curriculum, or even some of the choices that you had, or what did you do as far as picking a curriculum?
Yeah, well, that's really interesting, and I do want to say, and I'm getting off your question a little bit, but I do want to say that having a background in education did give me somewhat of a sense of confidence to homeschool, especially to the outside world. So when people would question, oh, you're going to homeschool, and then you say, well, I'm a teacher, and then suddenly, oh, it's okay, which I think is really funny, because you certainly do not have to have a background in education. You really don't even have to have a college degree to educate your children really well at home. But it was a kind of a safe way I could say, oh, I'm a teacher, and then it would reassure the person that it was okay. So I avoided a lot of, you know, kind of negative dialogue with people that way. But interestingly, although I had a master's degree in education, I was petrified about teaching my daughter how to read. I mean, petrified. I thought, I can't do that. I don't know how to do it. To me, it was this insurmountable obstacle. Then I was really worried about it. And now I realize that is so ridiculous. It is not that hard to teach someone to read. We have made it this mythical thing. It's not that big of a deal. So curriculum, yeah, because we were living abroad, my husband and I were language learners, and we were spending a lot of time just absorbing the culture and the language, and we were really busy with our work. I really needed an out-of-the-box curriculum. So I bought Sunlight, and I do not regret it in the least. It was a great fit. It's what I needed. I needed a weekly plan with little boxes to check and all the books in one package, you know, where I didn't really have to think and choose and select. So it worked out great. It's exactly what I needed. But as time went on and I became more confident and we were spending less time in language learning, I was able to kind of go out on my own. And now, where I am at this point, I'm pretty much all over the board with curriculum choices. So, you know, we might use one thing for math, something totally different for science, and then we kind of wing it, you know, for another topic. So I've really changed over the years. I definitely had a Charlotte Mason Living Books foundation with nature study and a lot of humanities, you know, fine art and composers. But it just definitely has changed over the years. And I've realized, Evan, that that's okay. It's natural for things to change. And so I don't worry about, you know, oh, I used to be this and now I'm this. It's okay. There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, and it's a recurring theme when I have a chance to talk to people who are new to homeschooling. You just think, all right, well, I need this really rigid structure, and I'll find one thing and just continue to use that over and over again. But as you get more confident and you've been doing it for a while, then I've seen where you feel more comfortable in just picking and choosing and deciding what you're going to do and being okay with that. So I'm glad that you found that rhythm with your daughter.
Hmm.
Now, you mentioned some of the challenges, even as a school teacher, of feeling confident with being able to teach your child how to read, or just some of the struggles that we have as homeschoolers. Were there any other challenges, maybe opposition from family members or just outside pressures?
It was really different for us. Our circumstance was extremely unique because we were homeschooling as expatriates overseas.
Hmm.
So, people here in America, friends and family here, all just knew that we would homeschool. There wasn't anything strange about that because they just expected that. But certainly from locals where we lived, it was very, in fact, there's not really a word for homeschool. So this is kind of the dialogue I would have with people. They would say, oh, where does your daughter go to school? And I would say, well, she's homeschooled. That means I teach her at home. She doesn't go to a school to learn. She learns at home. I have a curriculum from America, and I teach her at home. So I had to go through that because if I just did homeschool, it didn't connect. There was no understanding of what that meant. So then there would be a lot of questions, to further clarify. And then sometimes there would be like a 10, 15-minute dialogue before they'd finally say, oh, you teach her at home. It was just a very, very foreign concept, and definitely one of the biggest issues we got, this is worldwide, with socialization. And so the next question was, well, how will she have friends? Does she have friends? And so my great retort to that always was, Devin, oh, you send your children or your child, because it's mostly one child policy. They mostly have an only child like I do. And I'd say, oh, so you send your daughter to school for friends? Oh, well, I thought school was for learning. And that would typically cause them to think really hard about what they were saying and the assumptions that they were just swallowing without any real thought. And then they would stop and say, oh, well, you're right, school is for learning. And I'd say, right, so we do school at home, and then friends are something separate that we do outside of school time. And they could accept that really easily.
And that's a great answer. And I think more people just don't know what to say when they're asked about socialization. But I think over time, as you see that that's really not an issue, or that the question that they're asking, they're not really sure themselves what they're asking, it just gets easier to answer.
Absolutely. And I wrote a blog post on my main homeschooling blog, Jimmie's Collage, and it was called Socialization, the Proof is in the Pudding. And that was the gist of it, that over time people will see that that whole issue is a moot point. It's not a problem. When they get to know your child and they see your child in action and how your child interacts with adults and children and peers, and they realize this child's got beautiful socialization skills. This child has no problem whatsoever. So they don't question it when they see the proof.
Okay. Now, one of the ways that some people address the social issues and being able to interact with other families and other children is extracurricular activities or homeschool co-ops. Have you participated in any of that, or?
Over the years, there have been different situations depending on where we lived, where we would hang out with some other expat moms and do some activities. It wasn't a big part of our life. Definitely, frequently enrolled my daughter in art lessons. She's very artistic, so wherever we've lived, we've done lots of art lessons. For me, I think the socialization was more about friendships. So inviting people into our home, being hospitable, doing things with people. We were very quick to just drop what we were doing. If we got an invitation to go to a park, go to a zoo, go somewhere for the weekend, we tried to almost always say yes, because we knew that we needed to take advantage. So that's always been our motto, especially as a mom of an only. She doesn't have siblings, and we don't have as many opportunities. We have to be more proactive. And so when other people invited us, my basic kind of rule was say yes, especially living abroad. But even here in America, I'm kind of known as the flexible one, because I feel like if someone else is going to invite us, I need to take advantage of that. I need to make that opportunity for my daughter.
Okay, I'm glad you addressed that as well, because many of our guests have come from the perspective of maybe a large family or just having multiple children, but surely there are others who are homeschoolers of an only child, and it's good to hear that perspective and just see how you reach out and connect with other families.
You have to be proactive. And actually, my business partner, Amy Stoltz, and I have written a book called Homeschooling an Only Child, When Just One is Just Right. And you can find that at homeschoolanonlychild.com. Let me make sure that's right. Homeschoolanonlychild.com, yes. And did you know that only about 7% of homeschool families have one child?
Wow.
So we're definitely in the minority, but there are a lot of us out there. Number-wise, but definitely in the minority. But if you have an only, you're not alone, but you are in the minority. But I hope that if any of you listening have one, that you'll check out the site, homeschoolanonlychild.com, and connect with us. We also have a Google Plus community that's just for moms who homeschool an only child.
Okay. Now, this is going to be episode 11 of the podcast, so we'll definitely link up to it in the show notes and share that with our audience. Well, let's change gears a bit and we'll talk about some of your business ventures. Let's talk about iHomeschool Network. Where did that come from and how did you get started with that?
Well, it's been about a year and a half now, and Amy Stoltz and I were online friends, kind of blogging buddies. She is the creator of heartofthematteronline.com, which has been sold since. She's no longer the owner, but she created that along with someone else. And I knew her through that site. I was a contributor. And we were talking online, chatting, and we had this idea of getting the best homeschool bloggers together. And when I say best, I just mean people that take blogging a little bit more seriously, that really want to be a little more professional with their blogs. There's nothing wrong with having a journal blog where you just kind of show birthday pictures and field trip pictures. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that, but we were looking for those bloggers that maybe wanted to take it up a notch and really learn more about using social media strategically. And we thought, well, what if we got these people together and we had a network where we boosted each other, we cooperated on different projects, and we could also reach out and do marketing campaigns. And that's what we do. It is a for-profit business. It's not just a club. It's actually my livelihood. And so we network with companies that want to reach the homeschool market. Unfortunately, we've had some amazing companies connect with us, just fantastic homeschool products and education-friendly products. So we will run a little review campaign. And these are not massive campaigns. These are anywhere from 5 to 20 reviews. They're kind of small campaigns. They're kind of homey, but they're extremely high quality. And our bloggers will use the product and then write about it on their blogs. And again, these are really top-notch products. We've had some people contact us and we thought, it's not really that great of a fit. So we're real choosy about who we work with. And we're really proud of what we've accomplished. It's a way for some homeschool moms to earn a small amount of income on the side through their blogs. And so we are we're running this business, we're profiting from it, and our bloggers are profiting, and these companies that have fantastic products are getting the word out to people that want to hear. As homeschool moms, we're always on the lookout for a new, really cool product, that's really valuable and relevant, and so that's what we do. Okay,
and that definitely seems like a win-win situation for you as business owners, but also for the companies. They're getting high-quality reviews, and then the moms and the bloggers are able to try out some products that they might not otherwise interact with. So
correct.
That's very great. And one thing that I've noticed lately is just the power of collaboration and working along with people who have the same vision and or moving in the same direction. I actually had the opportunity to meet up with some other dads who are homeschooling and just kind of doing some of the things that are similar, like you mentioned, blogging and all that. And it's just amazing the focus that you can have, and when you push each other in the right direction, you'd be amazed at the things that you can accomplish. So I definitely understand the power of that network.
It's fantastic. I really love it, and I really appreciate those women. And we don't just talk about blogging, but there are prayer requests offered and personal matters discussed, and we just run the gamut of really being friends online.
Okay. Now, I think you mentioned something about some hangouts that you do as a part of the network. Tell us a little bit about those.
Yeah, we have weekly hangouts on Google+, And a hangout is just a live broadcast. We have a panel who will discuss a certain topic. It's moderated by Diana Kennedy, and different bloggers from our network of 100 bloggers will show up, depending on the topic, and we talk. And then if the outside people who are watching live can interact with us on the event page on Google Plus by leaving comments and questions, and those comments and questions sometimes get brought into the live event and get shown on the screen and discussed. And you can certainly leave comments and questions after the event is over, and you can certainly watch it when it's over because it's recorded. In fact, it all goes to our YouTube channel, our iHomeschool Network YouTube channel, and so you can find all of our previous Hangouts there and just watch the ones that you're interested in, because they run the gamut, from preschool to field trips to sensory play to teaching worldview. We've got all kinds of things. So obviously, some things relate more to, an individual than others. And you can embed those, like if you're a blogger yourself and you're looking for some content, you can embed those videos, you can share them on social media. It's been a fantastic way for us to build community with all kinds of homeschool moms. And it's been a great way for our bloggers to showcase their expertise. We had one yesterday about preschool, and, it's been a long time since I've had a preschooler. But it was fascinating. The women come with such expertise and such genuine kind of nuts and bolts tips. They're not these crazy abstract ideals that no one can reach, but these women are very much in the trenches. They very much know what it's like. And they were just offering these amazing ideas that are really, really valuable. And of course, all that's free. It's just a great hour every week on Thursdays at 2 Eastern, 1 Central, where you can hang out with other moms.
Wow. We'll definitely link up to that. I think, as you mentioned, when you just interact with people who have certain expertise and they're able to share, you just learn so much. That's one of the reasons why I'm doing this podcast. I've learned from all the different experts, and interestingly enough, you mentioned preschooling, and my last guest was Kendra Fletcher from Preschoolers in Peace.
Yeah.
So she shared some great information, and homeschool moms can definitely benefit, and then dads as well. It's just so much out there, and when you interact with people who, like you said, are in the trenches, it's just a great thing.
Yes. And we always try to season everything with a lot of grace and mercy, and there's no one right way to do things. We're all different, and it's a message that we say constantly. This is my experience, but yours will vary, and it's okay. And that's one of the big, I think, overarching messages that we want to get across to people.
Okay. Now, our last segment is called 7 with Devin. And this is our lightning round where I'll give you 7 questions, and you just give me your best answer, and our listeners are ready. Well, the first 2 are, what is the top free resource that you recommend for our listeners? This could be a software package, it could be a website, or even something off of the web. And then secondly, what would be a paid resource that you recommend?
Well, I'm going to plug my own site, notebookingfairy.com, for the free resource. I have loads, over 100 free themed notebooking pages that you can download at notebookingfairy.com. So that would be my freebie. And then for a paid resource, there's so many things, but if you force me to pick just one, I really love Wonder Maps that is published by Bright Ideas Press. It's one of those kind of larger purchases. It's about $50, but it's one of those things that you will use year after year after year. All of your years of homeschooling, you can use it. It's very customizable. It's digital. There's not even anything to put on your shelf unless you want to get the CD version. So it's a product that I really love. I really stand behind. And just full disclosure, I work for Bright Ideas Press. They're one of my main clients, and I love them. But I am also a user of Wonder Maps, and I have a review on Jimmie'sCollage.com of Wonder Maps if you'd like to see it in action.
Okay. Now, one of the reasons I love doing the 7 with Devin segment is I always find out about resources that I've never even heard of. So thanks for telling us about Wonder Maps. We'll link up to that. Now, think back to when you first started. You mentioned that your daughter's 14 now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, think back years ago, probably a decade ago, when you're thinking about homeschooling and If you had an opportunity to start over, what would be the first step, or what would you do differently?
You know, I've thought about this a lot, and honestly, if I had it to do over, I would probably be an unschooler. Um, I have really seen that we don't have to be as uptight, rigid, scheduled as we think. And I definitely, when I made that transition from teaching to homeschooling, I was definitely a lot less rigid. I knew I didn't have to do what I did in the classroom. That was really obvious to me. But what wasn't obvious to me was that I could really trust that unschooling approach. If I had to do it again, I would probably actually be an unschooler.
Okay. Now, kind of going along those lines, if there's a new homeschool mom out there, or uh, even, I guess, someone who's been doing it for a few years, what would be your advice to them?
My advice is read, get connected. You know, if you're an extrovert, find a local group because you're going to do better interacting with people that are on the same page as you. If you're more of an introvert, then online resources might be better for you, but find an online community where you feel like you fit. I mean, there's so many options with forums, Facebook groups, Google Plus communities. Find somewhere where you can get the support that you need.
Okay, now two more questions here that are somewhat related. What's been the greatest reward of homeschooling, and then what has been your greatest challenge?
The greatest reward by far has been entering the teenage years with my daughter and seeing the depth of our relationship. I honestly don't think we would have this if we had not homeschooled. And that is a treasure, just an absolute treasure that I value every day. And the biggest challenge, I don't know. You know, there have been, honestly, I've felt like homeschooling has been fantastic. And I mean, I think my challenge is really more tied to living abroad and parenting abroad, and I would have a lot of questions and self-doubts, and if I would see something in my child, I would always question, is this because I'm raising her abroad? Did we mess up? Did we make a bad choice? I really didn't question the homeschooling as much. For me, it was more the being abroad, but it all is kind of lumped together, and I guess so the biggest challenge is just questioning myself, am I doing the right thing? And, you know, I think we made the right choices overall, and the mistakes that we've made, God's grace has really covered them.
Okay, and as Kendra mentioned, grace wins. So definitely the Lord's grace kind of fills in where we have the gaps.
Thank goodness.
Well, let's end on a light note. What's a unique talent or a characteristic about you that not many people know?
Devin, I looked at that question and I thought, I have no idea. You know, I think if people follow me online, they know a lot about me. I'm a pretty open person, but I am an introvert, and maybe that would surprise people to know that I am an introvert. I really don't like crowds. I really don't like big groups of people, but I can speak in front of crowds. I'm not afraid to speak. I actually love speaking, but I don't really like a party scene or, you know, like a bunch of people. I really prefer to just hang out with 2 or 3 friends. That's my preference, and I really like a lot of alone time.
You sound a whole lot like me, and it's quite interesting because I'm meeting all these people online and I'm doing interviews, which is something that you would think an extrovert would do, but we're out here in the community and doing things that involve a lot of people, even though we're introverts. So I think that's very unique.
Okay, good.
Well, before we close out the interview, I want to give you an opportunity to share a resource of the week with our listeners and a way that they can benefit from you and your site.
Okay, well, I think I would like to encourage this resource is our iHomeschool Network newsletter because it's really the broadest thing that I have to offer. It covers on all kinds of different needs for homeschool moms. So if you'll go to ihomeschoolnetwork.com, you'll see there's a side for homeschool moms and there's a side for businesses. So just click on the side for moms and you'll see information about our newsletter sign up. And let me just assure everyone that although sometimes there are very selective affiliate links in our newsletter. It is not an e-blast or sales campaign. We don't sell access to our list to any companies. We keep this separate from our business. This is purely providing valuable content for moms, encouragement. I've gotten emails from people saying, oh my word, the newsletter today hit me exactly where I was. I so needed to hear this. Thank you so much. And that's the kind of messages that we send out, and we feature some of our bloggers in those also. So they're not about selling. They're all about tools and encouragement.
Okay. Now, the last thing we want to do is just share with our audience the best ways to connect with you.
Well, my favorite platform is Google+. So if you are on Google+, you can find me at Jimmie Lanley. You put plus Jimmie Lanley over there, and you can find me. Or if you like Twitter, I'm also Jimmie Lanley on Twitter, JimmieLanley. Those are really the main places I am. I'm on Pinterest too, but people don't really talk on Pinterest. It's not really a communication platform. So Google+ and Twitter, and just send me an email if you have a question or you want to connect with me. I'm JimmieLanley@gmail.com.
Okay, well, thank you so much for being our guest today, and we definitely learned a lot, and I hope that everyone has been encouraged and inspired. So thank you.
Thank you for having me, Devin. It was a lot of fun.
Well, I hope you enjoyed this week's interview with my guest, Jimmie Lanley. I invite you to check out her website at ihomeschoolnetwork.com and also to connect with her on social media. She's very active on Google+, and as she mentioned during the course of the interview, the iHomeschool Network does weekly Google Hangouts that you can view live or you can view in archives on their YouTube channel. If you haven't connected with us on social media yet, I invite you to just check us out on Facebook, facebook.com/connectedhomeschooling. You can also subscribe to this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and you can also view them on YouTube. Tune in next time when we come back with another educational, inspiring, and encouraging episode. Be blessed.